Welcome to Crimson Guitars, welcome to my home studio, and welcome to episode 14 of Luthiers Question Time. This is the freewheeling Luthiers Q&A live stream and then podcast, although that has yet to make an actual appearance live. We are absolutely working on it, and yeah, it is going to be awesome. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. It is 9 p.m. Sunday evening UK time. We have another live stream going live on Friday evenings, 5:30 p.m. UK time, and this is to spread the love somewhat. But yeah, what can you do? Welcome. Okay, we have a bunch of people here. Ravenwolf, Rabnox, Real KH again. I've just sent him an Instagram message. I spend very, very little time on my personal Instagram or replying to anybody doing anything because life is so insane and there's so many of you wanting my attention. But I saw that message and replied. Crumpet is in the house. Things I came here to do is also present. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Alrighty, so what I require is a bunch of people asking me a bunch of questions, and I will answer with not quite glee. It is, after all, past my bedtime. I'm finding that I'm getting old at this point. But yeah, life is all good. So, well, without further ado, the title, Adieu. Without further ado. Let me know in the live chat what you think is the correct way of saying that. James Dawes says, hey Ben, lockdown lifting was almost a curse and a blessing as I was busy, so couldn't watch. Okay. Yes, life has recommenced to a certain extent, to the point that I'm leaving my phone on loud, which is really bad. Okay, so Stephen from SD Guitars is saying that the mic is a little bit crackly. I'm not entirely sure what I can do about that. Let me know if it persists, and I think I have a spare somewhere around, or I could potentially just use the microphone inside of the computer, which wouldn't be necessarily ideal. Adieu, says Studio Lemuria. Okay, Coolwood Italy says he emailed a question to the stream at Crimson Guitars addressed. I do not have, for some reason, my system is not picking those emails up. I think I've broken security, but we're going to be getting a load of those, and my team back at Crimson are going to make sure, well, basically Monday morning, it's in the diary. I need to see what's happening. I've changed my entire system in order to do the live stream, and I think I'm using the wrong app. Did I mention that I'm old and technology does not necessarily treat me too kindly anymore? Okay, anyway, Coolwood Italy, I will get back to you on that soon. John Morris has a question. He says, do you ever envisage Crimson going down the Kiesel route and offering multiple options on your production guitars? I wouldn't necessarily call it the Kiesel route. I was doing it long before he was. Just nowhere near as successfully, and that is the sort of bite in my voice you hear. Okay. I will go to a supermarket and kindly old ladies will ask me, are you all right, young man? Oh, is that mistletoe on your head? No, it's a crow. Oh, you should have mistletoe put on your head. But the reason why they ask me if I'm all right is because I'm sitting there with a plethora of toothpaste to choose from. And I don't know which one is the correct answer and which one's going to get me in trouble with my wife and children. They probably all have different ones. But that's the same sort of issue. Paralysis of options. There's a proper term and I'm forgetting it. But it really is an issue. Now, that being said, how I envisage Crimson building and growing and changing is, I want us to be a custom shop for the world. And essentially that's what Kiesel do, but they limit them to certain models, which is fine. We're not necessarily going to do that because first and foremost, that is what we do. We build instruments, whether it is a descendant or a scion, for example. It doesn't really matter. Each individual instrument has its individual specs, from color to sometimes inlays, to materials and timbers and woods and fretboards and the like, and we can customize any of them already. We just don't offer that as an option on the website. Now, that being said, the kit guitars that we do that are absolutely fantastic, and oh come on, I should have done that much more smoothly. Bring on the kit guitars. The luthiers who work in our kit department are the same people who have a hand in the early processes of our production guitars. And we've been working very, very closely with that team to speed everything up and make everything as streamlined as humanly as possible and as accurate as humanly possible, with the exact thought that we would like to massively scale up our operation in the guitar building domain. And that will be a lot of different models, and it will also be offering far more pure, total scratch build custom instruments, whether they are partially made on CNC machines using CNCs and laser cutters and potentially a 3D printer, I don't know, or something that is handmade. It depends on which would be the faster and more accurate route. Sometimes with a relatively basic body shape, etc., it's quicker just to grab a lump of wood, chuck it on a bandsaw, cut the shape out, go over to an oscillating spindle sander and have at it. Within 15 minutes, you've got a body blank. A video that I very, very much want to do at some point is I want to race a CNC machine. And essentially I will get our top CNC artist to, we'll both sit with a specification, maybe come up in collaboration with you, the viewers, and we will see who can make it fastest. That person is going to have to start with, with nothing. Draw the guitar up. Maybe a few cheats, i.e. humbucker templates and things like that. And I would have the same templates in MDF. I suspect I would win. I really do. Anyhow, that was a damn fine question. Thank you very much, John Morris. All right, now we need to say the title of this podcast live stream is "What Makes a Good Guitar Builder," and I'm going to start doing this more and more. I want to make the live streams a little bit more interesting for people coming on the back end, and I'd like to start off each week potentially with a different topic, and then ask me any questions that are germane to what's in the title. And I haven't necessarily given this huge amounts of thought. It's a question that comes up every now and then, mainly with people saying, hey, am I good enough to be a guitar builder? Last week, or I think on Friday, there was a cabinet maker who said, hey, will a background in cabinet making help or hinder me? And absolutely, it's a help, 100%. Now, I would say that the most important thing, let me preface this by saying that I am still not entirely sure that I am a great guitar builder. I definitely am on a journey, as is my company. And what I've done in the past and how I've acted in the past and how I've, been has not necessarily been what I would like to see now. And it's a constant learning, growing curve. # always be learning. Now, one of the most important things that I would say here is exactly that. It's about learning. It's about knowing that at any point somebody might come along and completely disprove what you believe to be true about guitar building, about tone, about sound. In fact, we seem to be able to hold two things in our mind as being true at the same time that are mutually exclusive. You know, really heavy, dense guitars have fantastic tone. Or really lightweight guitars have fantastic tone. Which is it? Both. A lot of the time. I think stiffness has something to do with it. But yeah, so for me, the most important rule is believing in what you believe and being passionate about that, but also being able to turn around and say, well, actually, yeah, this is something that needs to be worked on. Okay, so, and changed. That being said, what makes a great guitar builder today and what made a great guitar builder 30 years ago are not necessarily the same thing. We live in a digital world now. We live in a world where every person has a computer in their pocket and will see an image of your instrument and will zoom right in, and all sins will be laid bare without a shadow of a doubt. And it is one of those things, we really have got to a point where we can't hide anything and people expect perfection. And if you look at the old masters, D'Acquisto, D'Angelico, etc., a lot of their work their inlay had gaps. You know, the fretwork was fantastic, etc., but it was a lot more handmade. And I think that when I started, even 20 odd years ago, I got away with a lot more than I should have. And these days, people coming up in the business, they are expected to know so much more and to be so much better from the beginning. And in the end, what makes a good guitar builder is, it's boring really, but it's practice and doing it as much as humanly possible. And whether you're a player or not makes no difference whatsoever. It's all about whether you can learn and make what you've learned a reality. All right, we have a question from Melancholy Monk, and this is somebody who I don't think we've met in the live stream before. How's it going? He sent a £5 super chat and says, I'm about to spray Metal Flake in nitro tomorrow. Any tips that could help me, and would I need to increase the pressure? A gun has a 1.8mm tip. Cheers. I'm afraid and this is one of the embarrassing things, I am not, on electronics and finishing, I am not as knowledgeable as I would like. And nitro is something that I've historically avoided as much as humanly possible. It is a problematic lacquer. It takes the drying time and the resprays and thin coats and all that jazz. We tend to, at Crimson, go for a 2-pack poly and apply that very thinly, but it works very, very rapidly. We were also tempted with UV. Anyway, that does not affect the answer to this question. 1.8mm tip should be absolutely fine. I think you might need to increase the pressure a little bit, but it all, and this is one of those horrible answers, it all depends. It depends on what setup you've currently got and how it reacts. A lot of spraying is knowing your gun and your compressor and what it will do. I would say set up with, say, 10% more material than you think you'll need. Have something off to the side that you fancy having a metallic flake finish on. Many years ago, I was playing with my first flip-flop finish. And sorry, let me finish my sentence first. Have something on hand, experiment, play with the gun, dial it in, and then go for it. It's just one of those things. A lot of the time with finish, I will say you have to test it first and be done. Okay, now what I would say, sorry, the story was I set up, I put in the flip-flop finish that I thought I'd needed and sprayed my guitar, and I had basically twice as much material, and I ran out of the spray booth, spray booth. This was in one of my sheds years ago. Ran around the workshop looking for things to spray, and there was a scalpel blade handle and a plane, a little block plane, and then I had a gorgeous angle poised lamp that was, you know, a little bit tacky, and I dusted it off, and I was in a huge rush, so I grabbed my end cutters and snipped, and the end cutters exploded. And I remembered that I was a total idiot. So yeah, don't do that. Anyhow, I think every week at this point is going to be an embarrassing story. I'm going to, I hope, run out of them soon, but watch this space. Alrighty. I have a question here from Craig Maxwell. He's sent a £5 super chat. Thanks very much, Craig. And he says, hey Ben, would you ever consider making some Perspex templates? I've already emailed into office at. It is something that we would do and can do. Our new laser cutter is relatively new to us, and we haven't, I don't think we have cut Perspex to date. The next stage after the MDF templates that we're doing at the moment is going to be metal. I want to cut our own metal inlays, the logo inlays and various bits and pieces. We can do stainless steel, apparently. Well, that's the machine I spec'd out. So Perspex is on the cards. They should drop you an email back. We appear to be having some difficulties with. Here's a truism. Every time a company doubles in size, every single thing about that company breaks and stops working efficiently. From the way that your website works, to the way your accounts are run, to the way your customer service is dealt with. And we're scrambling to figure out the customer service side of things. We haven't doubled this point, but parts of the business have been massively hit by, in a negative light, obviously due to COVID, but other parts have gone quite insane. And we're learning. Very soon there may well be a pop-up on your screens when you go onto Crimson saying, hey, do you want to chat with somebody in the office? And we'll actually have people in the office to answer these things. For me, this podcast and live stream is part of that. I want to be here to be able to answer your questions straight out. So yes, we should be able to do Perspex. It should be imminent. And if it's a design that we already do, then we really should be able to do it. And I will see how far I can go. Hold on. There we go. I will put it in my list of things to talk about tomorrow and tell them to look out for your question. Okay. Koen Verstralen has sent €5. He says, I need new pickup rings. OG ones are straight base slant 9mm to 10.7 in chrome. I can't find them anywhere. Can Crimson make a custom order in chrome? Can, yes, almost certainly. Would it be cost effective? I'm really not sure, and I'm really not sure. I know that one of my goals long term is to do premium pickup rings out of various different materials, because like you, the options that we currently have are not necessarily the best. But yeah, I would say we probably have the ability to machine out of brass. We have the ability to machine out of brass. We could then get that chrome plated, but doing that sort of thing as a one-off is expensive. I sent a single bridge to be chrome plated once, and I think we paid 60 quid to get that done. I know a watchmaker who could probably rhodium plate it relatively inexpensively. But yeah, drop us an email, office@crimsonguitars.com, talk to Sam, and we'll see what we can do. That's another one for my list. Okay, Ravencroft Guitars has sent 10 Canadian dollars. Thanks very much, dude. He says, hey Ben, if I come do a course with you, when I come and do a course with you, will someone teach me how to set up and use a plane? Aha, I got a cheap block plane at the start of Great Guitar Build Off and never got it right. I did the whole build without one. Absolutely, and if nobody wants to, sorry, I've seen the next question and it completely threw me off track. If nobody has the time, essentially it's not part of your standard operating procedure for the shorter courses. We will say, okay, fine, if you're here for 5 days, then really you're starting with a very serious time constraint. A hand plane, a hand tool is not necessarily the best thing to sit down and learn. However, our guys are there to teach you what you want to learn. And oftentimes, even if it's, hey, spend an extra half an hour in the evening or something, one of us will come and walk you through that process. Tom is a big fan of hand tools. So speaking of hand tools and people who tend not to use them very much, Texas Toast Guitars, welcome gentlemen, has sent a $5 super chat and said, is it too early to start drinking? I need to keep it together for another few hours. Yes, it's I'm not entirely sure what the time is in your neck of the woods. I suspect early afternoon, but I mean, is it ever too early, really? As long as you don't use a pin router, ever, actually. Yeah, that's one of the rules. Pin routers scare the hell out of me. Anyhow, welcome to the chaos, and yeah, welcome. Phil Plowman has come in and said, hey Ben, I got some old chisels of my grandfather when he died. I'm sorry for your loss. They are beat up and nearly round where they should be sharp. Any tips on how to sharpen them? Spending hours on a sharpening stone? Hell no, absolutely not. Now, I'm incredibly lucky. I have got a Robert Sorby Pro Edge in the corner there. I'm not sponsored by them. It just happens to be the best sharpening system I've ever come across that isn't a professional knife maker's belt grinding tool. It's amazing. Use a machine like that. Anything that will take the metal off and flatten your chisel up as much as humanly possible. Get it to the correct angle. 25 degrees, for example, is a fantastic angle if they're bevel chisels and you're going to be doing the relatively delicate work that we tend to do as guitar builders. A 30-degree angle is used for mortise chisels and things where you've got a mallet and you're really going to be beating that and pushing it through. And essentially, the edge of the chisel is not quite as sharp because there's more material to push through the wood, but it will last much longer under that beating. I actually have some chisels here that are at 20 degrees for very super fine pairing work. The one thing that you need to be aware of is that you don't want to mess the steel up by going too fast and too hot. This applies equally for steel and hand tools and relationships. Bear that in mind. Now, have a bucket of water next to you or a mug or something, and especially if you're working on a bunch of tools, work for 30 seconds or so until you start feeling the metal getting warm. Your hands should be an inch or two away from the thing. You can even watch the water as it starts to evaporate, because you're dipping in the water, taking it out and going straight to either a bench grinder or a linishing tool of some sort. I have even used, or been tempted to use, because I do have the proper thing, the Triton belt sander. It's an oscillating spindle sander, but it's also got a belt on there, and that would be perfect, or would work at least, for this particular task. Once you've got your bevel and you're absolutely sure that you haven't burnt the steel, once you're there, then you move on to either water stones or a scary sharp system. Check out, I did a video with Matthew from Workshop Heaven a number of years ago now, and I think it had the word scary sharp in the title. He completely changed my mind on that system, and you should check it out. Okay. This is going well. Thank you very much. A number of you are actually sending questions in. Last week, a lot of it was, at least at the beginning, there was a lot of internal chat, which is great, but very little for me to talk about, and I was not on, I was not quite at the level that I would hope to be normally. But this is going along quite nicely, so thank you very much. Okay, CCG Custom Guitars, and yes, I'm on the water today. He says, Hi Ben, I'm using dye plus alcohol ink to ebonize the body. It means I can't use spirits to clean, and I'm scared to lay a base layer of thinned poly for the same reason. Help? I've said it already before tonight, run a test. Now, I absolutely understand your worry here. However, it might be a moot point. If your dye and alcohol ink, which sounds interesting, by the way, if that has been allowed enough time to cure, then and off gas properly, you shouldn't have an issue. I have had, way back when I used to do my own finishing, I have had issues with cracking and just strange bubbles appearing out of nowhere, and they were all caused by one of two things: either the substrate stain, and I used to use, I suppose, candy coat, essentially the constituent parts of automotive paint that they actually put into, 3 drops of that, 5 drops of that. I used those colors as my stains for many years. I bought half a litre of each one, and then they lasted me forever. And putting that on and then immediately going with a finish, and you had stuff off-gassing through your finish and causing trouble. And the other one was obviously, temperature and extremes of temperature and humidity, because it does cause some issues as well. Okay, let us have a look. I think I've missed a question here. Okay, so Texas Toast says, you can't drink all day if you don't start early. Fair enough. Yeah. Oh, there we go. I thought I'd missed something. Rolf Hall has sent in $5 Aussie, I think. It says, hey Ben, 2 questions. 1, the best way to cut the slot for a 5-way switch. Damn fine question. I remember agonizing, like literally losing sleep over this question. 2, would it be possible for you to timestamp the questions? Okay. Yes. If you go back to, I think, episode 3, I did sit down and timestamp the questions, and that was 2 hours for recording the thing, and then 2 hours for sitting down and timestamping the questions. And when I got to the end of it, I got 3/4 of the way through the questions, because I did such a long live stream that I ran out. You were only allowed 5,000 characters, and it just ran out, and I gave up. And I personally, I simply don't have the time. It was soul destroying. It was much like, here's a sad story. Just prior to this, a couple of hours ago, my 10-year-old, wow, was doing his homework just before school tomorrow, and it's this newfangled stuff online. And he did this whole load of maths. I mean, and I quote, Daddy, will you help me? I've got to, it's fractions into decimals into something else. And I said, darling, you seem to be confusing me with somebody who can do any of that. And he said, good point, I'll go and talk to Mummy. But anyway, they did it, and got to the point where he submitted it. And the website lost all of his work. And it was like, we seem to have an error. Please refresh your page. Gone. So, yes. Anyhow, that by way of saying we could timestamp the questions. If somebody wants to volunteer to do that for us, I would happily take you up on that 100%, but at the moment it's not something that we really can do in-house, at least. Now, this is the best question. What is the best way to cut a slot for a 5-way switch? The best way is to have a CNC do it for you, because it just does it and it's easy and it's done. Woohoo! However, the way that I've ended up doing it myself over many years is to drill using a 2mm, I think, maybe 2.5mm wide drill bit at either end of the slot, being absolutely dead certain that you are in the correct place. Use a bradawl of some sort to mark the holes so they go in exactly the right place. And once you've done that, draw the lines, scribe the lines, cut the lines with a scalpel blade, and then cutting inside of the lines, I use a coping saw? I'm not sure what these things are called, actually, with a relatively coarse blade on it. And then you go in afterwards with a fine file and yeah, a jeweler's file, and go for it. Alrighty, fine. Damn fine question there. J.E. Toby has sent a $5 super chat and says, I use a Tormac, old green, Shapton Waterstones, I love my Shapton Waterstones, and a mounted hard leather diamond paste impregnated hard leather strop. After Tormac, all hand. And 24 with an asterisk there, and I'm not entirely sure what that is referencing. Okay, so yes, Tormac are very good. They are well known for accessorizing very well. The issue with the Tormac system is that it is based on a round wheel, and anybody who knows anything about sharpening knows that that's, you know, the beveled face is only half of the recipe. You have to have a perfectly flat back of your blade as well, for example, for a plain blade or a chisel, and doing that by hand as well it depends on the quality and condition of the tool that you're getting. But I've wasted so much of my time doing that. Now, what I would suggest with the Tormac, at least, is... Sorry, yes, it works very well. You've got your curve in the blade, which actually helps. When you go onto your hand tools, you've essentially got two reference points at the front and the back of the blade to put it on your Shapton stones or diamond stones, etc., and you can just go like that. Now, I seem to be using more of my CPU than I currently want, so I'm just going to see if this makes any difference whatsoever. This is one of those things. The world is just not on my side, it seems, with live streams. Let me know if the quality is still okay, and we'll go from there. I'm just checking my messages. Stephen from SC Guitars, yes, thank you very much. I've missed a bunch of questions here. Derek Colton has come in with $5 and said, thanks for making my mum smile on Friday. Means a lot to me. Dad passed young. She raised myself and 2 brothers by herself. She's an angel. 3 boys. Oh, yes. Well, I mean, at least one of them has turned out all right. He seems to be building guitars. And yeah, your mum's cool. Absolutely. JJC Bass Guitars has sent $5 and said, hey Ben, I want my build to be stealth with no controls, just a kill switch and a jack socket. How would I sort the resistor for a jazz bass style? Resistor, potentiometer, etc. Okay. You have several options. In all seriousness, first of all, think to yourself, do I need a volume control? Do I need a tone control? A lot of the time, a lot of players don't bother. Now, the best players need them and use them a lot, so yeah, bear that in mind, of course. I have seen but never experimented with essentially touch-free controls, and we're seeing it a lot these days. Sensors with alcohol gel, hand gel, etc., for example, or taps that turn on by touch. I've seen linear pots that you can run your hand along and that will turn up the volume or turn down the volume. It can be wired in many, many ways. That is so far beyond my current abilities, but it is an option. Another one, to be honest, is to have hidden controls off to one side, much like you would have on many acoustic guitars. Essentially a side-mounted pot, either a linear sliding pot that's off the edge of the bass, for example, or on the top somewhere, or even a rotary one where you've got a hidden wheel. That was something that I considered for Nebula, and that could work very, very well. Okay, now Rob Phoenix has sent £10. Thanks very much, Rob. And he says, "Evening, Ben and all. Inlaying Paduke with a thin maple binding into an ebony fretboard. Any need to seal the inlays? Cheers." No, I mean, Paduke and ebony is one of my favourite combinations of all time. Red and black will never not be cool. Just never. I had a kid when I was in my class at like 9, and we were all doing this major history project, and he came in with a 10-page document, and he'd taken red and black electrical tape, and he'd covered every single page in this. I think it was on World War II and all of that jazz, and it was the single most impressive thing I had ever seen in my young life. So yeah, red and black all the way. No, you don't need to seal it. Your maple might take on, or will get a little bit dirty, but it depends on how thin it is. I think if you're using a 0.7mm accent piece, it's gonna always be lighter than everything around it, no matter what happens. And if it does take on a little bit too much of the ebony, for example, while you're sanding, just go down and scrape it clean, and you will be fine. I am absolutely sure. Okay. So, 1, 2. Okay, so apparently the microphone is still cracking, but when I move this arm, so I'm going to stop moving my arm, and we'll see what happens. I think that we're going to get an external mic. I didn't want one sitting in front of my face for this because, you know, it's annoying, but yeah, there we go. Let's see. Alrighty, Music has sent $5. Says, "Cheers, Ben. I am scared shitless to drill holes for Tunematic type bridges in my parts casters. Do you offer, or can you recommend a template? Help!" I would not be surprised if that is something that we offer as a template. If it isn't, please email office@crimsonguitars.com for the attention of Sam. Say that Ben in the live stream dropped you in it, mate, and said that you guys would do a template for me. Most Tunematics are standard, and I'm sure it's something that we can do. I would suggest it would be better if we could have something with a hardened steel bushing in the correct place so that you could actually use it time and time again. The other option, in all seriousness, is it is something that you can do yourself, again, using a bradawl. I seem to have forgotten what bradawls are called tonight. And being trebly certain of where you are drilling. Now, one option is to gently tape your bridge in the correct place. Be certain it's the correct place, absolutely. And then take a center point drill bit that is the right size. So oftentimes you'll have a 4mm hole in the top of the Tunematic through which the posts go. Take a 4mm brad point and gently with your finger twist it around The bridge is going to hold everything square, and it is acting as your metallic guide bush. That then gives you a point that you can emphasize with your brad point, or with your bradawl. Haha, there we go. And it should work. It absolutely should work. That's how I do things. And then go in firstly with a 1 or a 1.5 millimeter drill, and then follow it with a very, very sharp, good quality brad point, and go slowly, and you should be okay. Here is a question from Real KH. He says, "Hey Ben, talking CA glue finish. Scary talk. I did a test on a small test piece. Should I stick with the common Crimson CA or try Starbond, medium and thin?" I would say that since the Starbond is relatively new to our thing, that you should use the Crimson to start with, especially as it's a finish. There are differences in the quality, which is why we've moved, but as a finish, you can definitely go for it. I would, however, like to just warn you that while super glue, CA, cyanoacrylate glue, is fantastic as a finish, and you see wood turners use it on really nice pens, for example, made on a lathe under speed, doing the same thing on a guitar is orders of magnitude more problematic. And some of the problems are the gas. The main problem is the gas that you get from the CA as it is curing. If you have particularly thin wood and you're trying to use it much like you would epoxy to solidify the wood, you're using a lot of super glue and it off gases. Do it outside. Make sure you don't have any small animals near you who will die, or children, etc. And then in exactly the same way, when you're sanding it off, because it does not self-level to the same extent as many epoxies will, sanding it will warm it up and you'll get more gas. You have to wear proper finishing masks, gas masks basically, when you're working on it. That stuff is super not good for you. Whew, alrighty, Zach Ellison, hey dude, he says, "Ben, I love all the questions and answers. It always teaches me something. I've thought about your stream's title. For me, it's one of two answers, integrity or skill. I've settled with integrity. Ideas?" See, I got derailed by a flurry of questions, and that was something that I wanted to mention. Now, I said early on I got away with a lot of things, and a lot of the guitars that I made simply were not as good as they could have been. I was not as good a guitar builder as I thought I was, especially not right at the beginning. And none of us are. We're always going to be selling things that we're not necessarily happy with. In fact, I still sell things that I'm not entirely happy with, because part of growing and learning and getting better is thinking, well, nobody's ever going to see that. Nobody's ever going to know. I mean, a lot of you see and know, and it has no effect on the build. But if only I'd used a scraper at that one point, it would have been better. Or instead of this veneer, I used that veneer. Instead of copper, I could have maybe used a shielding paint, etc. There's a myriad small things that go into making a guitar, and the fact that you choose integrity, that is, it says a lot about you. The back side of the guitar, the inside of the guitar, the bits that nobody will ever see other than maybe another luthier in 20 years when something needs a refret, for example. It's thinking about that guy and thinking, well, do I slap my frets in sideways because, hey, it's fun? Or do I make absolutely certain that they are put in normally, maybe with a dab of glue, because he's going to expect some glue, but it's going to be easy to take out. We're not leaving... Yeah, you get my gist. That sounds weird. You get the gist of what I'm saying. I absolutely agree with you. And it's not only integrity with regards to the build itself, it's integrity with how you deal with your customers. And if something goes wrong, you fix that, and you fix the hell out of it. We had an issue last week, and it's a customer. He's a long-term customer, somebody I've dealt with personally. I built a guitar for him personally. He had something else built by us, and it went out, and there were issues with it. And he came in and he said, "Hey Ben," well, it didn't come in, he sent us an email, and he was unhappy with what had happened, but he was also saying, "Don't fire anybody." And that customer has the same integrity that he knows I have, and we've figured out what the issues were. And again, it's one of those, hey, we've grown bigger and sort of took our eye off the ball in the last 6 months or so with regards to who's checking what. Thought somebody was doing it and somebody else wasn't doing it, and yeah, but we're shipping this guitar back to us at, you know, great expense actually, even though we could have somebody local do it and it's not that much of an issue. But we want to see what went wrong and why, so we can fix it so that this doesn't happen again. And it is what it is. Whew. Okay, Zach Ellison says, I think integrity affects humility towards skill, honesty with yourself about skill level, etc. That's a good start for me. And that is seriously the issue. I thought that I was the hottest of hot shit available. I really did. I was making spiky guitars, and it was only in the deepest, darkest recesses of my heart when I delivered something that I felt embarrassed. And I'm like, and I remember one guitar in particular 20 years ago, and it was the first 2-pack finish I had ever done myself, and I could not get it right. And I knew the customer wasn't happy, and he didn't say anything because he also knew that I was super excited about it and passionate, and I let him have it, and I still regret that now. Anyhow, it is what it is, and there we are. Honesty and honesty with yourself, and you know, a lot of these things, if it needs to be redone, it needs to be redone. And a few more hours here nor there. It just is what it is. Okay, now Coolwood Italy says he ordered the Crimson Fretboard restorative set, which he plans to use on a new ebony fretboard. Question: do I need to use the cleaner to prime the fretboard at all, or just go straight to the oil? No, just go straight to the oil if it's a fresh, brand new fretboard that you have sanded down and radiused and done all of that good stuff too. The restorative is your beastie. Isn't it funny? I was going to say the restorative is your man, and I'm like, well, actually, you know, in this day and age, you don't say things like that anymore, do you? Okay. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Okay, this is from Nick Falzone at Mark Macaulay. Just to be clear, see what I did there? Ha! I don't know why anyone would use nitro these days, especially with metal flake. It sounds like a recipe for disaster. I feel the same. To a certain extent, it's one of those things that I've just always avoided. Okay, now there was a question from Claire, and again I haven't seen her. Oh, look at this. This is just scintillating, isn't it? You're watching me play on my phone. It's like a family dinner. Okay, we're good. Lib Rebel says, haha, I've just noticed the planes are on the wrong side of the screen again, are they? Has the screen flipped? Again? Well, that is just a problem. I can fix it though. Alrighty. Joe Brown says, how's the book coming, Ben? Can I pick one up when I come for my course in October? Ha ha. Why the ha ha? I could have it finished in October. The book, I've done nothing. We've come to a point where at this point of the year, 3 of my companies all have accounts due. And while I've completely delegated entirely everything to do with Crimson, which is fantastic, apart from actually reading and signing them off, I have to do quite a bit for the tool shop in particular. And that has taken my time up recently. But I would sincerely hope that by Christmas we're going to have actual copies available, and by October, November time, really. Yeah, I think I can do that. Okay. Ravencroft says, I'm looking at a 2-week course for my 30th in a couple of years. I'll just have to live without a plane until then. No, dude, seriously, check out, there are videos, there are many people out there who've gone through how to set them up and how to play. You might well just have a plane that can't be set up. Try and find a local woodworking shop or cabinet making shop in particular who wouldn't mind, even if you go around and say, hey look, can I give you 15 quid for 10 minutes of your time, show me your hand planes, how you use them and how I should have mine set up. People love when somebody else shows an interest in what they are passionate about. Why the hell do you think I am sitting here at nearly 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday evening? I should be up watching a movie in my bed and being relaxed, but you guys are interested in what I do, and I love that. And the same holds with local carpenters and craftspeople in your area. Please don't wait 2 years to know the joy of a finely set up hand plane. Okay. Texas Toast says, Ben told me once that he was not a super fan of the pin router. More for the rest of us. No, I had a very scary pin router, and it's just one of those machines that just scared the crap out of me. I grew up in the craft with scrapers and hand planes and thumb planes, and there was a guy I studied with who decided that shark skin and papyrus leaves were the correct things to use when building violins because they were traditional. I mean, I think he was a total idiot, but hey, yeah. So routers, pin routers in particular, go for it. It's not my speed. Not my speed at all. Oh no, Rab Knox says you won't be judging mine. Texas Toaster judges in the Great Guitar Build-Off this year. As my memory card got corrupted or something, so I lost all my work. Ha! Dude, I am really sorry about that. Rab Knox, drop me a personal email through stream@crimsonguitars.com just to say who you are and tell me the story, please. We will, yeah, I will give you a consolation prize of some sort because that truly sucks. It really does. For that matter, if any of you are using GoPros, I've had an error come up on my GoPro a couple of times saying the memory card has been corrupted, you're going to have to format it in order to work. I did format it the first time and lost a shot, but the second time I just turned the camera off and turned it on again, and it came up with a thing saying reconstructing a file, and it reconstructed the file and was actually saved. So bear that in mind. Rensteig Bruce, which I probably mauled your name, I'm sorry. He says, would you install electronics before applying finish, or doesn't it matter to you? Never apply electronics before finish, ever. The whole point of, well, just don't. You need to have a virgin guitar, absolutely clean, clear, nothing going on whatsoever, unless you're talking about potentially a piezo that is actually built into the inside of the instrument, the finish is going to get in there. It's going to muck up the electronics and cause issues. Don't do it. And especially if you are using a 2-pack lacquer or something like that you're going to rub down and flatten and buff and polish. You don't want things that are going to get caught up on the buffing wheel and rip the guitar out of your hands. You do not want the water that you use to lubricate your wet and dry paper as you're flattening it off to get into the electronics and destroy that as well. There is no reason, absolutely no reason for you to do that. There we go. SC Guitar says, my birthday is in November, so your book wouldn't go amiss. Wink, wink. Do you know what? I would have... Yeah, it's a deal. Done. I mean, I've already promised you one, Stephen. Come on, man. Dum-da-dum. Questions, questions, questions. Robert R says, I'm having the same issue setting up my new Stanley number 62 low angle plane. Okay, what you need to do is take it, donate it to somebody and buy a Lee Nielsen. No. Stanley have gone downhill drastically, and they're trying to pull themselves back up to the level that they should be at, and I applaud them for that. That being said, what you need to be aware of is this front section. I'm pretty sure the Stanley low angle, that moves, and that opens up and closes down, etc. I had a Stanley low angle block plane, one of the new ones that I paid full price for. Actually, this was prior to me having a tool shop of my own, and that section wasn't sitting flush. And what had happened is this bit here, where they drilled through to have the screw, essentially, they drilled through and then not deburred the edge. So while that had been ground on a surface grinder, etc., beforehand, they then drilled that through and it was not sitting flat and proper. Check that. That might be an issue. And I apologize for that. I apologize on behalf of Stanley for that, because that just sucks. Stephen Clark has sent a super chat and he says, when truss rod routing for a Strat neck with a fretboard that extends beyond the nut, okay, where do you end the cut for the hex bolt? Just before the nut, or does the head of the rod sit under the nut? It doesn't really matter all that much. Especially with a Strat type, you're talking about an 1/8 of an inch. Yes, I'm pretty sure it's an 1/8 of an inch nut. Having that have less support where the truss rod is, it's not going to break. I have seen larger gaps where you basically would stop beforehand so that the nut is sitting on wood the whole way. You may possibly hear a difference on those two strings that are on either side of the truss rod. Actually, there we go. This is a thought experiment. A lot of these questions I'm obviously answering on the well, all of them I'm answering on the fly. As I thought about that one, I think that you should stop your truss rod just before the nut, so that you've got the same amount of material underneath every single one of the strings, just in case you have some sort of a weird change in the tonality of the strings and the way it vibrates, because it isn't supported at one of the only 2 places where it's supported properly. That is something that I did not know that I thought until right now. Vulcan Essen has come in with a €5 super chat and said, hi Ben, is there an easier way to align magnets on headstock and truss rod cover than playfully or painfully measuring? Cheers, Vulcan. Playfully measuring is something entirely different. So, yes, very basically, if what you've got is thin enough, have your so where the truss rod cover is going to go, drill in the 2 magnets that are going to be in the no. Okay, the way I did it most recently actually was, you've got your truss rod cover, put the magnets where they're going to be, install them properly, okay, nice and flush and perfect and all that jazz. Get another couple of the tiny 2mm magnets and put them onto the existing magnets. Therefore, you'll actually have a couple of magnets, or 3 even, poking out. Then put the truss rod cover where it needs to be and press down. If the timber that you're using is soft enough, you will see the marks of where those magnets are, and with that in mind, you will then be able to use your brad awl and drill down. If the wood is not soft enough for that to work, then get some masking tape and lay a substrate of masking tape underneath where the truss rod cover is going to go, without burnishing it down. Then put the truss rod cover down on there, push, and you'll see 2 or 3 perfect circles where they need to be. And the last thing to remember is to it's just to make sure that the magnets are the poles of the magnets are the right way around, so that they don't push the ones on the truss rod cover away. I have done that before. It's embarrassing, but is what it is. Okay. So for some reason, I really am using far more CPU this week than I would like. There we go. My daughter had me download Steam, and that's running away doing stuff. Typical. Okay, maybe that'll be better. Woohoo! There we go. That's better. I hope that the audio and everything's in sync and we're all good. Okay. Now, please don't forget to subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. And we've got nearly 300 people watching and only 114 likes. Click that button, it doesn't hurt. I know a lot of you are... Ben Timon says, don't be torrified of maple. I love torrified maple. It's a really, really crap joke, but that's the first thing I said when I heard the term. And yeah, it's fantastic. The Yeecha says, what do you think of the new Stanley 102 block plane? I had no idea there was a new Stanley 102 block plane. I don't know. Let me have a quick look. It's probably... Okay. Well, the ones I can see are very, very, very basic. With the red top. I mean, it should be okay. It's a 20 quid plane, so it's not going to be great. SC Guitar says, Steam, the destroyer of CPU. Yeah, we've dropped 10,466 kilobytes per second over the course of the stream, and that is not ideal. But hey, it is what it is. Alrighty. Can I bake maple in my cooking oven? I don't know. Are you currently married, or do you live with a significant other, and do you value your life? Okay, technically yes, but in reality no. A proper torrified timber of any sort is not only baked, it's baked in a vacuum, and that is not something that many people have the capacity to do. I mean, I'm looking at a miniature vacuum pump behind me. I don't really see what the issue is with making a great big chamber around an oven and torrifying my own wood. That could be a fun video. So yes, you can. People have done those sorts of things, but yeah, again, experiment with it. Kabayoth says, we never speak of crimson pickups. What are your thoughts on what you are looking for in what you send out the door? Sorry, what are your thoughts on what you are looking for in what you send out the door? Okay, I have very little personal knowledge beyond, hey, I know these are the magnets, this is the gauge of wire we use, and this is roughly the amount of wires to get this. The why all of these things do what they do and how it gets to the result that it is something that I let people who are much more intelligent than I worry about. That being said, Sam Hook, who is the director of operations now at Crimson Guitars, he was the head of production guitars at least, and he is a pickup maker. And he came and said, look, we need to make Crimson pickups. Here's a set. I loved the set. And his name is Sam Hook, and they're called Classic Hookers because, hey. And then, of course, we've got a hot set coming, and it's going to be the Hot Hookers because it has to be. We can't not now. We've started it, and we're going to muscle on through. So what I'm saying is I love the sound of the pickups that we've made. And that's it, basically. For example, we are in the process of developing a neck-mounted jazz humbucker for Nebula and for a jazz guitar that's in a case just there that I need to do. And Sam is working on this with me. We're going through various prototypes, and I'm working with the customer of the jazz guitar to get the exact tone that he wants. And he's been playing guitars for 40 or 50 years and knows exactly what he needs. So in the end, what I'm saying is we talk to the customers. When they're happy, we're happy. Karens need not apply. Okay, James Dawes. Oh, is James Dawes in the building? Where is he? Yes, your electric uke looks amazing. So this is a Great Guitar Build-Off entry, I think. I don't know, I assume it is. It has got edge light acrylic built into the guitar, and I'm really bloody annoyed that you got there before me, because that's something that I really want to do. And yeah, the whole thing is just supremely cool. I don't think I would be lying if I said it's the coolest looking ukulele I've ever seen. So there we go. Yeah, I really enjoy that. Okay. Bring on the questions, people. We have been going for 1 hour and 7 minutes, and I'm not going to be going for huge amounts of time. Jimmy Griffin says, please, if you don't mind, explaining a vacuum pump and baking maple. I don't know why that's the process, but for torrefying maple, you remove all of the oxygen. It's oxygen, is it? Okay, here we go. Let us walk back the process. You put the wood in an oven, you heat it up, okay, which is essentially boiling off the moisture that's inside of the timber. It is also crystallizing and solidifying the various minerals and things that have been left in the tree from the torrents and torrents of water that go through it on a yearly basis. And your vacuum is pulling these things out of those fantastic tubes and internal structures that make up a tree. So if you just dry a wood normally in a kiln or even air dried, what you have is all of those minerals and crystalline structures, etc., just stay put. The moisture goes out, most of the moisture goes out, but you've got all these things that stay in and stay in forever, and you end up with a relatively hard wood. Now, that's not necessarily an issue, but torrefied wood, a lot of that gets pulled out because it is in a vacuum. So you can get the same look by baking it without the vacuum. You'll get that same sort of honeyed gorgeousness that we all love, but it will still not have all of the characteristics of torrefied wood. Boom. I didn't know that before you asked the question. I assume I'm correct. Hold on, I saw somebody say Ben with 4 exclamation marks. Actually, guys, come on, I'm a little bit disappointed because at the end of last week, somebody said that the way to get Ben's attention was to put a food name at the front of the comment, and then I would see it. And I'm not seeing any of that. Ivan Wizard says, Ben, you mentioned the Triton spindly belt sander. I have one, but the belt seems to love shaking a lot in its slot, making it not the squarest of operations. Have you this issue? No, I've got one here, and at least 5 at Crimson, and I've used more than half of those, and I haven't had that issue. Now, their customer service is incredible. Tell them that you have a problem and they will sort you out. It's one of the reasons why I support them with the fervor that I do support them. So essentially, what it could... I'm assuming that the belt is tracking properly, okay? And essentially you're saying that at the bottom the belt is going a little bit like that. It sounds like there might be an issue with how your main spindle is attached. I would take off the belt section, try one of the standard spindles and put that on there and see if that is moving. You might have been unlucky and you might have something that got knocked in transit where that spindle itself, the main spindle, is off true, and that's causing your issue. Frankly, they should replace that if that is the case. That's I've had that on a belt, one of the jet thickness sander, one of the first ones we had in transit. It got dropped, and the motor that drove the belt was off at an angle, and that caused no issues at all in the end. It just went do and looked weird. Thomas Gillis has sent a $5 super chat and says, thank you very much, Thomas, and says, what is your preferred process / method for accurately routing neck pockets and cavities in a guitar? Preferred? Bring on the CNCs. If you go back and watch the first video in my ever, I think I had a big old rant about how I disliked CNC machines and how wrong I was. Personally, right back at the beginning, I used to build through neck guitars because routing a neck pocket accurately scared me, and I could never seem to get the template to be absolutely correct. And to be frank, making templates is it's a craft in and of itself. And this is why we offer templates at Crimson Guitars, is because it's one of those things that takes time to develop, and it's an issue. So if at all possible, have a template that a CNC or a laser cutter has made that is accurate, and use that. Use it carefully. Pre-drill any cavities with big Forstner bits to remove as much material as possible, and then work up to the line very gently with a good sharp router cutter that has a bearing on the shaft, and just take small amounts of material off and go in that way. And that's it. It's all down to having a good template. If you can make a good template, which most people who can make a guitar really should be able to be honest. It's scary, but it's just one of those things. I make a template. I then use that template to route out another template and test the neck in that template, and then sometimes iterate on that. And you might end up with 2 or 3 templates before you get to one that's absolutely perfect. But with that process, you should be okay. Now, let's see. Nope. I'm trying not to move because of this crackly microphone. Guitar Lover 727 says, do you still have the first guitar you ever built? And Chris Snow below says, yes. And yes, I do. I absolutely do. Now, it's at my shop. Okay, I even picked it up from Crimson a couple of weeks ago, and it's actually at my other unit at this point. Somehow ended up there, but I am going to do a whole video taking that guitar and rebuilding it. One of my bits of advice that I always give is, if you're getting into guitar building, a lot of people get into it and don't have enough money to buy hardware for as many guitars as they need to make in order to get good at this thing. And I say reuse hardware, reuse pickups, and go for that. And my first guitar was okay-ish, and you'll see a video of it relatively soon, I think, after GGBO. And it doesn't have a bridge, it doesn't have pickups, etc. I need to rebuild it, and I'm going to do that on video. Alexis Guitar says, hey Ben, any tips on gluing a veneer to a body? Is Titebond okay? As I've heard water-based glues and veneers are not advised. Titebond is fine, just don't use too much. A lot of, if you used a toothed glue spreader that takes most of the glue away every 5mm or 1/4 inch or so, that then gives somewhere for the glue to spread as you push it down. But no, I've had no issues with using Titebond and veneer, and I've used it every time I've ever used veneer, either that or Alkaline Professional, which I've used in recent years. The tip is to grab, there's a packing material, I can't remember, it's extruded polyurethane or something like that. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick, and it's often got corrugations in it, and it's sort of greasy feeling stuff. If you were ever sleeping on the streets, it would be the sort of stuff you want to sleep on because it's incredibly well insulated. I'm not talking from experience here, which makes me very happy. But that stuff, essentially, put your glue on, put the veneer down, make sure that your veneer is nice and flat already. You might have had to iron it or damp it out and clamp it between 2 pieces of MDF. The MDF is porous, it'll pull the water out, and you should end up with a veneer that is perfectly flat without many ripples. Put the veneer down, put this sort of polyurethane plasticky stuff down, and then a flexible thin MDF clamping core. I'm assuming you're clamping on something that's flat, or at least a radius that is even. And as you clamp down, the plastic will spread itself out. It will push any bubbles through. After about 5 minutes, you're going to have to go around and tighten up all of your clamps again. That is my tip for veneers. Whew. Ryan Frappier has sent $10 and says, are there any considerations that should be made when designing an archtop tailpiece? Must it be mounted at the bottom of the guitar? It definitely must be mounted at the bottom of the guitar. I am... yes. A lot of questions today. It definitely has to be mounted at the bottom of the guitar. If your tailpiece is mounted just in the top, it's going to rip. It's going to rip itself to shreds. The tailpiece mounting back at the end is on the tail block, which goes. It's the side is glued to it, the ribs are glued to it, the top and the back are glued to it, and all of the strength of the guitar is there. Other than that, you need to worry about your string pull, where the strings are going to go, all of that jazz. But yeah, there's nothing really super special about it, to be honest. Yeah, okay. Matt Lang has come in and says, hiya, will Crimson produce an uncut bass kit? Also, would it be viable to convert an existing bass neck to headless? Okay, that surprised look on my face was, we're not already producing an uncut bass kit? Drop us an email, office@crimsonguitars.com, for the attention of Sam, and say, Ben says, why the hell aren't we already making an uncut bass kit? And he will probably say, I'll send you one next week. In 2 or 3 weeks. Yes, because we are adding new kits every couple of weeks at this point, and yeah, it's definitely something that we 100% will be and should be doing. If it isn't in development right now, I will be surprised. Okay. Pop-Tarts, this is from Stephen Clark. He says, can you explain the ways you have glued frets in and how/why you have changed from one technique to the other? Wood glue, CA from the top of the slot, thin CA from the sides after installed. All of the above. Alrighty, so CA from the top of the slot is absolutely fine if you've got one of those thin little doohickeys. These ship with the star bond that we're now selling, and if you're in America, there's a coupon underneath our videos that will get you a percentage off. So yeah, check that out. The issue is you can never be sure that you're not going to, when you hit the fret end, just explode super glue everywhere. And super glue is one of those things you just won't, you don't want to explode it everywhere. Seriously, you don't. Okay, another method that I used for a number of years actually was, instead of putting the super glue into the slot directly, I would run it from the pot directly along the back of the tang and then put the fret in and hammer that. Again, if you're careful and clever, you won't get any spread, and it's fine. No cleanup necessary. 7 frets out of 10, you have to clean it up. Super glue cures very quickly. You end up having to sand and scrape on what should have been a perfectly sanded fretboard before you put the frets in. It is taking a step back. It is redoing work that you've already done, and I literally despise having to redo work, especially if it's because something went wrong. It just, ugh. Yeah, I really don't like it. So, yeah, there we go. Those are the two methods. CA, cyanoacrylic thin glue, once the fret is in, and then you apply that from the edges. I do that from time to time, and it's not wrong. I would do that, and then some medium super glue, and then sand down the edge of the fretboard to get some dust in it, and then a little bit more medium super glue, and then it solidifies. It holds the frets in, but it does not necessarily fill the slots from end to end. Please excuse me. So that is what my issue is, in all seriousness. I want the fret slot to be homogeneous with the fret and the neck. I want everything to be all one piece. So nowadays I use just standard wood glue, the alkaline professional I use, or if I have Titebond, if I used Titebond, I would use Titebond. Or even for many years I used No More Nails, which is a very thick glue. The beauty of that is you can spooge it all over your fretboard. Yes, I use the word spooge, I love it. And whack the fret in. Glue will go everywhere, but it's a water-based glue. Once you've put 3 or 4 frets in, all nice and efficient like, you then go up with some strong tissue paper and water, and you clean it off, and by the end of your fret job, you've saved yourself an hour of extra scraping and sanding and fiddling about that should be avoided. And on top of that, you have a fret that is completely one with the neck. I'm not sure what's making that noise in the background. I'm going to assume a bird of some sort. Where are we? 20 past 10. Crikey, we're coming up on an hour and a half. John Hempel has sent a question. 15 Aussie dollars. It says, "G'day mate. Best way to prevent tear out and highly figured gidgee fretboard. Also, if there is a slight bow in, will it pull straight when glued to the neck?" On the latter part, if you can with your fingers, without too much hassle, flatten out the board, then you're absolutely fine. Yes, it will straighten out and it's fine. If you've got a major twist in the fretboard and a bow, at that point I would start reconsidering my fretboard options. Now, what is the best way to prevent tear out in highly figured timber of any sort? I've never experienced gidgee. I've played with very many actually Antipodean timbers, and you guys have got some stunning stuff there. Tassie Blackwood, oh, I mean, it can be boring, but it can be gorgeous. That being said, alrighty. I'm not going to mention a plane first. I'm not. If you've really got something that is massively figured, sometimes, and this is one of the very few situations, a leveling beam with some really coarse sandpaper is actually probably your best friend. Now, I very rarely say that I would prefer an abrasive over a blade. In fact, hardly ever. This is one of those situations though. A leveling beam with 40 grit or 60 grit, or I suppose you're talking about a radius, so get a radius block. One of my earliest memories was sanding radiuses onto a fretboard with a radius block and it taking hours and hours and hours, and there wasn't a handle on it like a plane. In fact, I made a plane handle for one of my blocks. So, well, there's an idea for a product. That's my pencil. So I've tried to avoid that as much as possible in my life moving forward. That being said, somebody mentioned one earlier, a low angle Stanley number 62. I've got the Lee Nielsen number 62 here. Quangshan also do very similar but very competitively priced and incredibly competitive quality actually plane, if you can get one. There's a major delay on Quangshan deliveries to the world at the moment due to COVID. A low angle plane is your best bet fighting highly figured timber. Now something else, if you imagine that the wood that I'm planing is straight, okay, so that's going up and down. If you angle your blade, sounds like a duck or something, doesn't it? Maybe my cats have caught a duck. If you angle your plane off the grain, so the grain's going vertical on your screen, and you go like that, then essentially you're slicing with your blade, and what's a low angle becomes even lower, even friendlier. So those are your two options. I would potentially say start with a low angle plane and get it roughly to where you want, and then go to sandpaper, but that is up to you. Okay, Cora Tree Custom Guitars has come in with a $5 super chat, thank you very much, and says, hey Ben, have you used Paulonia or Catalpa wood for electric guitars, and if so, what were your impressions on reworkability and longevity? I'm afraid I haven't. And this is strange because the name rings a bell with me for some reason. Most wood is absolutely fine. The supremely soft timbers like pine, etc., are to be avoided, specifically for necks and fretboards, etc., but just to be avoided in general. And incredibly hard woods are also the same sort of thing. I don't like using purple heart, for example. It's very hard. It's hard on my tools. It's not fun to do it. And you know what? I do this thing because I enjoy doing it. I don't want to... I don't want to build a guitar that's going to be not fun to make. So there we go. Okay. Swan sandwich. That's illegal. Hold on. And now it's gone. Who said swan sandwich? So the problem is the messages jump. And all I've got out of this is swan sandwich. I might find it in a second. Caffeine rush. I challenge you, Mr. Crow, to build a short scale bass guitar. You have free run on the design. Use your creative genius. Do ye accept this challenge, sir? Yes. In fact, I want to do a production short scale bass. I really do. So yes. Nick Guitar says, yes, in case you want to reuse tuners and bridge, what cheap material / method could be used to just have previous build under string tension? Honestly, off the top of my head, you could probably angle a piece of wood, and so have a piece of wood that's got a slight angle to it, and then clamp your neck to that, and that will pull the truss rod up, and you've got to clamp at either end of the guitar. That's probably the cheapest and easiest way to do that. I don't think it's necessary though, to be honest. Night Stew says, would a torrefied maple neck benefit from two 2mm Wenge laminate sheets, or better to be left alone? I will use 2 carbon fiber stiffening rods as well. What kind of truss rod is recommended? Low profile, dual action truss rods all the time, period, without question, in any build you do, apart from maybe a classical. That's debatable at that. Any neck will benefit from being multi-laminate. Any neck will benefit from having extra Wenge put in. It is, I am swiftly becoming convinced of the fact that I have a theory. There we go. I'm beating around the bush. I think that the best sounding guitars come from having particularly stiff necks. So yes. Now, is it overkill having that and a couple of carbon fiber stiffening rods? Potentially. Will it hurt? Absolutely not. Will it improve the tone? Probably. So yeah, if you fancy playing around with Wenge, go for it. Okay, somebody says they want bacon pancakes now. That sounds fun. Thoughts on F-holes versus round holes versus side ports? Give me all of them, damn it! A jazz guitar versus a dreadnought. They have got their own particular tonalities and sounds, and I love the look and feel and sound of a jazz guitar. I'm personally not that much of a fan of a big-bodied dreadnought. Just doesn't do it for me. I like parlor guitars. I love parlor guitars, actually, for that matter. So each has its place. That being said, sound ports on both F-holes and guitars with round sound holes, bring them on. Absolutely. Okay, Joe Flink says, I heard you can wax the fretboard before slotting, add CA and press, then remove with the paraffin with naphtha. Haven't tried it myself yet though. Yes, you can do that, but again, it's giving yourself 15 or 20 minutes worth more faff and messing around than you would have with just using a standard wood glue. And I don't see the point in doing it. I just don't see the point, and especially given the fact that you run the risk, you have to be very careful not to get your wax into the slots, otherwise your glue's not going to do anything in the slots either. So it would work, but yeah. Karen N says, oh, you don't sleep? I'm not sure if she's talking to me or not, but it feels like I don't sleep very much. In fact, no. Yeah, last night we were woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning by one of my sons throwing up all over the bathroom floor again. He has this issue where he just forgets to stop eating sometimes. And yeah, it's a problem. Dennis La Madeleine says, Ben, why did you have to put all that nasty stain on Nebula 2? By the way, hello from Vermont, USA. I had to put the stain on Nebula because that was what was commissioned, and because I think it looks amazing. I absolutely love the timber. I have some set aside for myself here, and I am torn. But I think I'm probably going to stain my version as well, in the same fashion. I really do. It's in the name. That is Nebula. Or the Guardians of the Galaxy guitar now, I suppose. But yeah, it's one of those things. The customer saw the first guitar, loved it, and tried to buy the first one the day that the video went live. Somebody else had literally just beaten them to the punch. We had the emails come in at almost the same time, and we offered it to the guy who emailed first by a factor of just minutes. He then commissioned this, and here we are. Far too long a time has passed, but here we are, and yeah, that finish is what was after, what we wanted. Alan Kelly says, I'm sorry I was late, I was walking the dog. I mean, dogs need walks too. Does figured wood affect tone for the worse? No, not in the slightest. In fact, figured wood tends to be a little bit denser and therefore be better, assuming you're talking about an acoustic type of instrument. Wood in general does not affect the tone very much in an electric guitar, not in a way that most people would be able to hear, at least. Fight me. Gidgee is the hardest Australian wood. You would get a lot of tear out. Okay. Sand it. Yeah, what I said earlier goes. I can't find this swan sandwich thing. Baconator, how about making a headless / fretless bass? Yes, I would like to. Can I use the bolt-on neck from a cheap guitar for my set neck build? Yes, absolutely. John Kelly Brown says, will you ever carry the 150 milliliter bottles of Fretboard Restorative again? I don't see it offered in this larger bottle on your site anymore. I'm not entirely sure why that is. You can drop us an email, office@crimsonguitars.com, and at the very least we will offer a bulk buy discount, I think. We could potentially do the 150mm ones. I think that maybe you were the only person that ever bought one, and that was why it was taken off, to be honest. They do last a long time, and we don't like waste, if at all possible. So yeah. As much as, hey, I'd like to take more money from everybody if that's the thing. If it means that a product is not going to be used, I'm not going to, sell it. On the topic of kits, this is from Unsub Press. He says, I'd sell my children for an ES style kit. Maybe 7-string, multi-scale, drool. I'll sell my entire collection for that kit. Send me photos of your collection of children and I will... No. We can do a carved ES335 style kit. That's something that we can do. A traditional 335 is actually pressed and laminated veneer. We don't have the presses or templates, etc. to do that. But it's something that we would consider, I'm sure. Ed Billy BN Blues, how's it going? He sent $10. He says, Poutine, hi Ben, long time listener, first time caller. Since we all know Tonewood is bunk, why does an aluminium telly sound like a Dobro? I'll hang up and listen to your answer. Okay, so I did say fight me, didn't I? Okay, yes, an aluminium Telecaster does sound like a Dobro. It has metal in it, and most aluminium Telecasters, wow, I'm picturing a solid billet of aluminium left solid. If you have a solid billet of aluminium and put strings on it, etc., it will sound like you've made it out of a solid piece of leadwood, for example. A hollow aluminium guitar is going to sound like a Dobro because, hey, a Dobro is a hollow-bodied instrument, which is very, very acoustically responsive in exactly the same way that a hollow telly would be. And they're basically the same instrument, albeit, slightly different. Now, obviously, you're talking about Tonewood, and I will say that the very best sounding electric instrument that I have ever made, when not put through an amp, just played acoustically there in the room. The very best sounding instrument I've ever made. It was made out of solid acrylic. Period. Yeah, the neck and the body are resin. And it resonates amazingly. Better than any woods I'd ever played with. And that is the point. You can make a guitar out of almost anything. In fact, I've seriously considered doing a range of builds. There's somebody on YouTube, and I don't know the name, and they say, I think their catchphrase is, "You build it, we'll skate it." And people send them skateboards made out of random things, up to and including there was a plate glass one that I enjoyed watching them try to break, which they did eventually, and nobody died in the process. But I really would like the idea of spending a year where every week I've got to make a guitar, or every 2 weeks, let's be realistic, every month, let's be properly realistic, I'd have to make a guitar out of something that somebody sent me. And I guarantee that most of those things would sound like an electric guitar. Maybe variations on a theme, of course. I've never said the tone wood is pure bunk. I have said that it is part of a recipe, and it is the smallest part of that recipe. Now, I will justify this and specify that tone. A lot of people do not think of sustain as part of your tone, and that is bullshit. Different materials sustain differently, and the sustain portion of the tone can be affected to a greater degree by the timber that you choose to use. In much the same way as it can be affected by a poor neck joint or a crappy bridge, for example. But that is most of what you hear. It's how the wood is sustaining and, you know, feeding the strings. The sound that you hear out of an amplifier, 95% of that is your amplifier and your pickups. And no one will be able to tell the difference acoustically between a $200 Strat and a $3,000 or $4,000 Strat. You just will not hear the difference. I'm sorry. I would love to be proved wrong. I really would, because guitar builders make a lot of money selling the secret sauce, and it's never been a secret sauce. It's always been, what wood can I get cheap that also looks good? Mahogany, Brazilian rosewood, obviously in the past, rosewood, alder, poplar, basswood, all of these things, tulip wood. We use these woods because they are readily available. They sound okay. And then a guitar builder will say, hey, I use this wood because that's thing, and rosewood necks. I love the sound of rosewood necks. I really do. Acoustically, through an amp, I can't tell the difference. I love how they look. I love how they feel, especially if you haven't put a finish on them. Woohoo. But through an amplifier, they sustain differently. And that's relatively subtle. You start chugging away, you're not gonna notice. Anyhow, you got me triggered. Damon Andrews says, any tips for CNC routing fretboard inlays? Yep, we go very slow, very shallow. We use 0.5 millimeter, 0.6 millimeter PCB router cutters. You can buy a dozen of them from China for like £5 or something, I think. And we break them a lot, but you go slow and you should be okay. We use those for cutting fret slots as well. Ed Billy BN Blue says, Ben, brother, you're a good sport. I didn't expect a serious answer. Saw you demo an Aluminium Telly on YouTube yesterday. Cheers, mate. No, I was thinking back to that one, absolutely. And I was going to keep that guitar for myself. I've had a couple come through. I think that was one that I was going to keep for myself, and I ended up not. And the sound was one of those things. but just how cold the damn thing was. I play guitar to relax. I don't play them to feel cold. One final thing, actually. The first guitar made out of aluminium was made out of aluminium, and I'm fairly sure I'm correct in saying this, somewhere in the first decade or maybe 15 years after the process to industrialize the production of aluminium was perfected, and that was in the 1800s. Chew on that. Okay, anyway, yeah, thank you very much, dude. I do appreciate the question, and you're right. Jangly aluminium, the materials do affect the sound acoustically for sure. Cyber Tiger says, great job, Ben, and thank you for your time and expertise. It's an absolute pleasure. It's appreciated, and it's fun hooking up with other guitar lovers. Best wishes to all you great guitar builders, 21 contestants. Thank you very much. I am... Oh, there we go. Apparently the noise is the cable going up and down my zipper. I apologize, I ruined this one. Discord. We are going to be setting up a Discord, which is essentially apparently some sort of an online thing where people go and talk about things. I mean, it's all gobbledygook to me. I just said gobbledygook. Alrighty, it's official. I'm knackered, people. Any experience with Australian Mother of Pearl Co? This is from Guitar Addicts Workshop. Yes, I have had nothing but good experiences from that company. We bought a lot of material from them over the years, relatively competitively priced. In fact, I think it's cheaper for us to go to them, including shipping, than it is to go to some of the UK suppliers. So, yes, they're really good company. James Dawes says, Discord hype. Yes, I do think that I'm going to have to do that at some point. Ross Falls has come in with £5. Thank you very much, Ross. Every little bit helps, like, majorly. He says, I've just built my first guitar and the intonation is great, but whenever I play an A chord, it sounds so bad. Is my nut wrong, or am I missing something? Almost certainly your nut is wrong, and it's not necessarily the scale length portion of it. It is probably your action, to be honest. The difference, one of the differences, let's get back to the title, what makes a good guitar builder? What makes a good guitar builder is somebody who can set up a guitar well. And for a long time, I couldn't. For a long, long time. I didn't know what that secret sauce was. I was never the best player. And my playing, I used to play with 13 gauge strings on my electric guitars with a massive action because I liked the way it sounded. And I stand by it. It sounds great. What I think you've got is your nut is probably too high. And essentially what you want to do is hold the string down at the 3rd fret and push down at the 2nd, and you should see just a tiny little gap above the 1st fret. If it's a big gap, the nut is too high, and essentially as you fret your A note chord, forgive me, that is changing the entire scale length of the string and messing with your intonation. So yeah, it'll be an action thing. Maybe while I am tired, maybe the relief of your truss rod as well. Okay, I'm seeing the word lead author and science nerd, and I'm a science nerd and papers make me wet. This is coming from Unsub Press. I want to know what the hell they're talking about. Ooh. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Oh, Guitar Addicts Workshop. He says, I sent you a suggestion a while ago for making a Kumiko themed guitar. This is, if I am not wrong, a letter that I saw just before lockdown, and it was talking about, yeah, and then the letter got lost and I was never able to reply to it. Kumiko, Japanese. Kumiko is, I think, where you essentially have different shapes and then you put material in between it. It's something that I've long wanted to do, and I've got 50 years worth of things that I really, really, really want to do, and I'm probably only going to be building for not that long. How old am I? Oh, I can do it. I can build until I'm 90. Yeah. No, that is something that does very, very much excite me. Unsubpress says, how many of us have thought that setting the action involved adjusting the truss rod? Would that it were that simple. Coolwood Italy says, can you recommend a good book for design considerations / making hollow body electric guitars? I don't know. Let us know in the comments. I'm going to call 9 minutes. It is 9 minutes to 11 and I am 100% flagging at this point. Okay. Yeah, there is a book, funnily enough, I think it was written by an Italian, about designing an electric guitar, and it goes into a lot of detail and a lot of it is good. A lot of it is very okay. But other than that, I don't know of any book that's specifically about design, and specifically about design of electric hollow body guitars. No, I don't. Okay, so we have Metal Base 1000 agreeing with me. To prevent tear out and very figured woods without stabilization, the best thing is very, very good quality abrasives or sharp carbide. Watch closely. Carbide dislikes being sharp. Highly positive rake angle. Alrighty. Ooh, Toodford. Unsubpress is telling Coolwood Italy to have a look at Ted Woodford. Oh, he's made some great book suggestions in one of his videos. His channel is TWOODFRD. I love watching his videos. He's a repairman par excellence in a tiny, tiny little workshop. But yeah, I've learned a lot watching him. Hold on. Bacon, bacon, bacon. There's a dissertation from 2010 on the science of stringed instruments. Ooh. I think I might have seen that actually, but yeah, I'm going to have a look about that. So we had, that's about the physics of stringed instruments. So talking about exactly that, we approached a university. I can't remember for the life of me which one it was. It was relatively local, so maybe Bournemouth University, something like that. And we had a very, very long in-person meeting at Crimson, talking to a professor of acoustics and the study of sound and sound waves and all that jazz. And we asked him to design an experiment that we would work on with him, that we would, you know, put together and write a paper on whether or not wood would affect the tone of an electric guitar. And he went away and he spent 2 or 3 months putting together a proposal and looking into it and looking into it. And he came back and he says, I am so sorry it's taken so long, but I don't feel comfortable writing a paper where it's a foregone conclusion that we're not going to be able to prove anything. So I'm sorry, it's a no-go. And that just says it all. So yeah, but then again, hey, that bullshit sells a lot of guitars. Metal Base says, I recently bought Purple Heart that is heavily figured throughout. I've never seen it before in 3 decades of playing guitar and bass. I can't decide, fretboard or as a laminate and a multi-laminate neck. I would have a multi-laminate neck with a figured Purple Heart fretboard. I had some very, very similar, incredible, and the timber merchant had dried it too fast. So as well as being highly figured, it had checks all the way throughout. I still used it. It was stable, but yeah. Ted Woodford is a fantastic luthier. This is from Gramurasal and Faborden. Unsuppressed says, by the way, was Jessica named after the Allman brothers? Jessica was the name for one of my favourite Alls. She's now in the house, actually, in my sort of leatherworking kit. Okay, look. Okay, come on then. Crunchy Chicken Burger. A really good and detailed book about design was written by, that's it, Leonard Lospinato, electric guitar and bass design. Great book. I liked, as I said earlier, that was the one I was referencing. I liked a large portion of it. And on my first reading, a couple of the chapters really pissed me off. And I actually avoided it for a number of years. But on rereading it, I realized that I was just being a bit of a fool, to be honest. Okay. You guys have got a couple more minutes. If there are any more questions, please feel free to ask. I am definitely slowing down. Okay, Unsuppressed says you should make contact with Ian Davlin from Lark Street. I know he watches you. His repair work is off the charts, especially punctures in acoustic guitars. Okay. Ian Davlin. This is why I do this. I really do enjoy the community and the sharing, and you know, we're all in this thing together, and the more people that I can help not have sleepless nights about how to do binding, for example, the better. James Dawes says, hurdy-gurdy. Nope, not yet. Wayne Marshall says, what happened to Shred? Shred is... No, I'm not going to show you Shred. Okay. The last time I actually nearly dropped her, getting her back on the hook, and I'm hooked up to this microphone at the moment. Shred is well in progress. Unfortunately, both Nebula and Shred ended up at the same stage at the same time, and that was really something I wanted to avoid. And finishing is just a slow process, so we did not have a Shred episode this week. I am working on a bridge, and suffering, actually. I'm properly suffering on the bridge. And yeah. Dave T says, how has COVID-19 affected the waiting times for Crimson courses? 2 weeks in my case. I need a fretless bass to replace a Music Man I regrettably sold many moons ago. Honestly, if you're in the UK, phone us up. We will have a space for you. We've just opened the courses up again. We had 3 students last week. I think we've got 4 next week. The capacity is for 14 or 15, I think, with COVID and all of that. Everything's spread out more, and we're not going to go to capacity. But yeah, there are courses available, definitely. You Make It, we skated it over at Braille Skateboarding, apparently. Guitar Addicts Workshop says, any suggestions for getting better at inlay work? Make art. Don't wait until you have a guitar to do. Say, hey, I'm going to inlay a shark into a piece of wood, and that's going to hang up on my wall or sit on my mantelpiece or whatever. And just practice and make stuff for yourself. That's by far the best way. Mike Grow says, would CA glue hold a bridge crack at the saddle towards the neck? Potentially, but I'm not entirely sure. Scott Partington says, favourite find from vintage tool shop, and did you keep it? Wow. I mean, that's difficult. I visited the tool shop yesterday. Here is a Matheson curved 1-inch gouge that came in that I yoinked. This is an India rubber spoogie tool of some sort. I don't know what it is, but that came here because I absolutely love it. this. I thought this hammer when I bought it was twice the size. And this is an utterly gorgeous Timmins, I think. R. Timmins strapped claw hammer. This is a gentleman's, just so stunning. So, I mean, those are my favorite tools from today. Favorite tool all time, maybe Stanley number 9. That's due to the value, and yeah, I kept it. It's the most amazing things come through, and I love tools so much. It's one of those things. I will do a video going through various drawers and parts of the collection and the stuff that I've kept. Something that I regret letting go. Something that I regret letting go was a steel tape measure in just a steel case by one of the engineering houses. So it's not Moore and Wright, maybe one of the American ones. The name has completely escaped me. But these steel tape measures, you pull the tape out and then this thing pops out, the handle pops out, and you wind the handle back to get it in. But this one, it was a flat steel disc and you could see where the handle was, but there was no, you couldn't get a finger in to pull or do anything. And it turned out that on the opposite side there was a button to push, and you push this button and the handle goes junk junk and comes out. I probably made a 200% profit on it, and you know, I needed to sell it, and I need to sell these things in order to keep that business going. It's not a profitable business, or barely. It's there to feed my addiction and to get more tools out of, you know, landfill, and to give this 5-6 people working there. It's not there to make me a lot of money. But that is a tool that I utterly, Brown and Sharp maybe, I utterly regret letting go. Anyway, we're absolutely at the end now. I'm going to have to say thank you very, very much. Ravenwolf Guitar says, Apple Pie, I have some tools I've been looking at possibly selling. Would you be interested? Shop at vintagetoolshop.com. Talk to Safi. She manages it for me. And yeah. Starrett, Ben Timon, Starrett, got it in one. I'm sure it was. Oh, Kuhn Vestralen's just sent a super chat. He says, ever thought about doing a guitar with a diagonal cut flame maple and quilted maple top? I don't think I've ever seen one. Could be an interesting look. I have thought about using non-standard cuts on guitars, and I've never had the guts to do it. It's just too off-piste. Can you believe it? Too off-piste for me. But there we go. Bulgarian Evolution says, "Gah, stupid YouTube. I just got the message you went live like 3 minutes ago." Okay. Ozerioth says, thanks for the stream, Ben. I've been watching since your original 24-hour build, attended your first open day, and have always valued your wisdom. May your beans remain forever cool, sir. Thank you very, very, very much. I really appreciate it. We need to have another open day when the world allows it. Final question. CJ Grezkowiak. There we go. Something like that. Thoughts on polymer clay as an inlay material? My thought is go for it. Make it happen. Absolutely no reason why it shouldn't work. Yeah. It is one of those things. I use every now and then a composite stone sold by a company called Small Wonder Music in the UK, and they fake lapis lazuli and bits and pieces, and I'm sure it's made out of polymer clay themselves. It's great stuff. Anyway, thank you very much for your support. Thank you for sticking around this long, and yeah, I really appreciate it. I love these things. I am going to go and call it a night though. So click like, subscribe, think up any questions that you have. We go live 9 o'clock Sunday evenings UK time and 5:30 p.m. on Fridays, and I would love to see you there. Rob Phoenix has just sent £5 saying go to bed.